folks, this is Roger Raynard with The Big Lie, part 2 of 3. I'm picking it up in section 5. Once again, for those of you that missed part 1, this document here is called The Big Lie. You can get a copy of this document if you go to dropbox.com, Free-Fiddle-Workshop, with dashes in between. Free-Fiddle-Workshop. Look for the document named The Big Lie. I have it in PDF and Word, and it's there. I wrote this document a little less than 2 weeks ago. Picking up in section 5. Who are the great monsters of the sea? The great sea monsters mentioned in verse 21. My hypothesis number 5. The great sea monsters in verse 21 are whales. And specifically, it's whales that eat swarms of fish or swarms of creeping things in the sea. God did not give man dominion over the great sea monsters. The great sea monsters do not include any sea predator, fish, mammal, or reptile. The great sea monsters are the great whales that eat plankton. That would be like a blue whale or the gray whale. God only created 2 types of things in the sea: the great sea monsters and things that swarm. That's all God created in chapter 1. Section 6. Who are the beasts of the earth, mentioned in verse 24? My hypothesis number 6. The beasts of the earth, in verse 24, are animals who eat every green plant for food. That's what God gave them for food later on in verse 30. Over whom man does not have dominion, because God did not give us dominion over the beasts of the earth. My hypothesis number 7. Every green plant, or plants that are all green but are not tilled by man. So that would include, green plants would include grass, hay, marijuana, aloe. Beasts of the earth would not eat marijuana or aloe. Therefore, beasts of the earth are wild animals who eat grass and hay. I include horses, elephants, hippopotami, rhinoceros. Not giraffes, because giraffes eat trees. Not sheep, goats, or llamas, because they are domesticated. They're not wild. In verse 26, God does not intend to give man dominion over the beasts of the earth. And notice that under God's law, then, to remain under God's law, a man can use a horse only if the horse is willing to help. Man did not give us dominion over the beasts of the earth. Section 7. Who are the cattle mentioned in verse 24? My hypothesis number 8. The cattle are cows over whom man has dominion. So I include oxen and cows, oxen for tilling, cows for milk, beef, and leather, all obtained as humanely as possible. Not buffalo, because man does not domesticate buffalo. You can put buffalo behind a fence, but that doesn't make them domesticated. You still have to be, they don't like being behind fences. Section 8. Then what food did God provide for man in Genesis chapter 1? My hypothesis number 9. God gave man the foods explicitly stated in verse 29, plus other living things on earth over which man has dominion. So in verse 29, every tree with seed, that's singular in its fruit. So I include peaches, plums. I'm not sure about mango, but I put that down. Not fruit with rinds to peel, such as oranges and bananas. Not fruit with multiple seeds, like apples and bananas. Plant yielding seeds, so things we can grow. I mentioned wheat. That could also be barley and oats. There's green plants. Green plants, marijuana for food. I put that in quotes. Smoking, that's a form of consumption. Green plant aloe for food. That's healing. That's a form of consumption. So I included that for food. Fish that swarm. God only created sea monsters and things that swarm. So fish that swarm would be, since we got dominion over fish in the sea, it would be only fish that swarm. Man has dominion over fish in the sea. God only created 2 types of sea creatures. That's the sea monsters and things that swarm. God also gave us command over birds of the air later on that eat every green plant for food. That also comes from verse 30. But no birds like that exist for us to eat. God gave us dominion over creeping things that creep upon the earth, but here again, none of those exist for food. Not creeping things in the sea, like swarming shrimp. Those are for the monsters of the sea, the whales, and not the beasts of the earth. So those are not for food. God did not provide those for food for man. And finally, to finish part 2 of 3, who are the names in the animal kingdom not mentioned in Genesis chapter 1? Who did God not create in this first chapter? I see no mention of the dog or cat families, wild or domestic, lions, tigers, ocelots, wolves, coyotes, foxes. A personal note here, the author, that's me, I love dogs. My last name means fox. I don't see dogs or foxes mentioned in Genesis chapter 1. I don't see any mention of birds that do not fly above the earth, such as ostrich, emu, roadrunner, or birds that eat meat, fish, or meat for food. Only birds that eat green plants for food. No fish or meat eaters like ducks or raptors, or birds that swarm. No mention of those in chapter 1. I see no mention of carnivores. Bears, weasels, raccoons, skunks, or wolverines. Once again, the beasts of the earth only eat every green plant for food. I don't see any mention of sea predators or sea creatures that do not swarm, like seals, sea lions, sharks, barracuda, killer whales, orca, lobsters, or crabs. And that ends part 2 of 3 of The Big Lie. I'm Roger Raynard. See you in part 3.